Have you ever noticed what happens to your brain when you walk into a massive, flashing, chaotic casino for the very first time?
Oh, yeah. It is complete sensory overload.
Exactly. For the first 5 minutes, your senses are just completely overwhelmed. I mean, the lights, the noise, the sheer volume of data hitting your eyes, it's staggering. But if you stay in there long enough, this psychological mechanism kicks in. It's called sensory gating.
Right. Your brain just starts filtering out the noise to protect itself from overloading.
Yeah. Soon you don't even hear the sirens or see the flashing lights anymore. You just sort of tune it all out.
Which is, a vital survival mechanism for human beings. Without it, we would literally be paralyzed by the continuous barrage of stimuli in our environment.
But what happens when the flashing casino isn't a room you can just walk out of? What happens when it is just the daily reality of the global news cycle?
That is the million-dollar question.
Welcome to our deep dive. Today is Tuesday, June 9th, 2026. And if you are listening to this, you're probably incredibly busy. The sheer volume of world-shifting information out there right now is, frankly, enough to trigger anyone's sensory gating.
Absolutely. It is a lot to take in.
So our mission today is to cut through that noise. We are taking one dense, comprehensive source, the latest edition of the Daily Tech Reader, and we are going to extract the underlying patterns. We are looking at the massive interconnected shifts happening across technology, our own biology, global geopolitics, and world culture.
And the value of looking at a single day's snapshot like this is that it forces us to look at the contradictions.
Right.
I mean, we are achieving things in silicon and steel that defy imagination, but simultaneously we're struggling with foundational biological and political breakdowns. The contrast is really sharp.
It is. So let's start with the loudest flashing light on the board today. We're looking at a concentration of wealth and technological leverage that is basically breaking historical models.
You're talking about the SpaceX IPO.
Yes. The roadshow is officially underway. They price this Thursday, June 11th, and the stock debuts on the NASDAQ on Friday under the ticker SPCX. And, get this, at the offering price of $135 a share, Elon Musk's net worth reaches $988 billion.
Which is just a number that demands a pause. Because if that share price gets just a 2.2% bump when trading opens...
Just 2.2%.
Yeah, moving to $138 a share, he becomes the world's first trillionaire.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because $1 trillion is one of those numbers that is so large, it's like loses all meaning for a normal person. It just sounds like a fake number.
Right, it doesn't compute. To ground it in reality, $1 trillion is roughly equivalent to the entire gross domestic product of a country like the Netherlands or Saudi Arabia.
Right.
But instead of that wealth being distributed across millions of citizens and managed by a state apparatus, it's concentrated in the hands of a single private individual.
Which is wild.
It really shifts the global power dynamic. When a private citizen has the economic leverage of a sovereign nation, they no longer just operate within the global economy. They actually have the gravity to alter its orbit.
And he's not operating in a vacuum either. OpenAI just filed confidential IPO paperwork on Monday.
Yeah, that was huge news.
It really was. That sets up this three-way race to the public markets between OpenAI, Anthropic, and SpaceX.
Reading this, I just kept thinking about the Gilded Age tycoons, the Vanderbilts, the Carnegies.
The railroad barons.
Exactly. They raced to build the physical railroads and steel mills that defined the 20th century. But these modern companies are laying tracks into entirely different frontiers. They're going into low Earth orbit and human consciousness.
Well, the Gilded Age analogy works up to a point, but the fundamental difference here is the velocity and the boundary of the ambition.
How do you mean?
The railroad tycoons were bound by geography and physics, right? The AI and space sectors are attempting to transcend both. They're building the cognitive and off-world infrastructure that will dictate the next century. Right.
But what's fascinating here is that the most revealing part of today's tech news isn't actually the IPOs. It's how the financial markets are reacting to actual deployed innovation.
Yes, the Apple situation.
Yeah.
Monday was Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, WWDC.
Yeah.
And this was a monumental day. I mean, it was Tim Cook's final WWDC as CEO.
And he got a massive standing ovation for it.
He did. And they debuted Siri AI. They released the developer beta for iOS 27, And they unveil a completely new design language called Liquid Glass UI.
Which is a huge deal. It abandons static grids entirely for interfaces that adapt fluidly using simulated physics and depth.
It's a massive leap forward in how we interact with machines. By any historical metric, this is a blockbuster event, and yet Apple's stock fell 1% on Tuesday.
Yeah. Now, a standard financial analyst would just call that a simple buy the rumor, sell a news correction, but there is a deeper psychological mechanism at play here.
Which is?
Tech expectations have become so astronomical that markets are completely desensitized to miracles.
Oh, wow. The sensory gating we talked about at the top of the show.
Precisely. The hype around artificial intelligence has artificially elevated our baseline for awe.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
When you've been promised that AI will solve all of humanity's problems, a fluid, physics-based user interface doesn't feel like a breakthrough anymore. It just feels like the bare minimum expectation.
Right, it's just expected.
We have built hardware and software that is practically miraculous, and we are greeting it with a collective yawn.
So we are completely numb to our own technological brilliance. And ironically, while our silicon processors are getting exponentially faster, the Daily Tech Reader points out that our actual biological processors are taking a serious hit.
The juxtaposition is really striking. As we push the outer limits of artificial cognition, we are witnessing a measurable degradation in human cognition, and it's entirely driven by our environment.
Yeah, there's a massive new study out today looking at 2,100 adults. It draws a direct link between the consumption of ultra-processed foods and poor attention spans, along with slower mental processing speeds.
Yeah, the data is pretty stark.
And what really stands out is that the researchers are openly comparing the food industry's engineering and marketing tactics to the tactics of the tobacco industry in the 20th century.
It is a heavy comparison, but it is structurally sound. I mean, the tobacco industry notoriously engineered their products with specific chemical additives.
To maximize addictiveness, right?
Exactly, all while obscuring the long-term health risks. The researchers in this study suggest the ultra-processed food industry is executing a very similar playbook. But rather than primarily targeting respiratory health, these hyper-engineered foods are bogging down neurological function.
Okay, I know a lot of you listening might be skeptical here. I hear you. Because isn't this just the latest diet panic?
It's a fair question.
I mean, every 5 years, there is a new dietary villain.
Yeah.
In the 90s, it was fat, then it was carbs, then it was gluten, and now ultra-processed is the buzzword.
Yeah.
But the way I'm trying to conceptualize this, think about smartphone algorithms.
Yeah.
Social media apps are specifically engineered by behavioral scientists to hack your dopamine receptors and steal your attention. Is it possible these foods are engineered to hack our biological signaling in the exact same way?
The mechanism you just described is exactly what the science is revealing. It is not a moral panic. It is a biochemical reality. Wow. This goes far beyond just empty calories. Ultra-processed foods contain synthetic emulsifiers and additives that disrupt the gut microbiome.
And that causes inflammation.
Yeah, that disruption triggers systemic inflammation throughout the body. And because of the gut-brain axis, which is the direct biochemical signaling pathway between your gastrointestinal tract and your central nervous system, that inflammation physically clouds cognition.
It literally slows down neural processing.
It is a biological hack.
And the ultimate paradox of 2026 is how we are trying to fix that hack. We aren't overhauling the food system. Instead, we are looking at the other major health story today.
The GLP-1 medications.
Yes, the evolution of drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro.
They originated as diabetes and weight loss treatments, right?
Right.
But multiple new studies are revealing their potential to prevent cancer and slow its progression. And the way they do this is fascinating.
So how does a weight loss drug actually fight cancer?
It comes back to those pathways we were just talking about. GLP-1 receptors don't just exist in the gut, they are present in the brain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where they modulate reward centers and they interact closely with the immune system. So by fundamentally altering how the body processes metabolic fuel, these drugs reduce systemic inflammation.
Which we just learned is caused by the food system.
Exactly. And they effectively cut off the energy supply chains that certain tumors rely on to grow. They change the cellular environment.
So, just to recap the absurdity of our current era, we have built a highly profitable engineered food system that causes systemic inflammation and slows down our brains. And our solution is to invent highly profitable engineered pharmaceuticals that rewire our metabolic pathways to fight off the damage caused by the food.
We are applying a synthetic patch to a synthetic problem.
Wow.
And the glaring inequality of that equation becomes so obvious when you look at the other public health alert in the source material today.
Yeah, this part was sobering.
While the developed world is investing billions into biohacking metabolic pathways, foundational infectious diseases are still devastating populations that lack basic infrastructure.
Yeah, the CDC is tracking a severe Ebola outbreak. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are 550 confirmed cases and 101 deaths so far.
It's tragic.
And Uganda has reported 19 cases and 2 deaths. The World Health Organization is warning of a worst-case scenario where, if containment protocols fail, we could see 20,000 cases within 3 months.
It really shatters the illusion of universal human progress. I mean, we are debating the longevity benefits of GLP-1s while tens of thousands of people face a highly lethal hemorrhagic fever because of profound disparities in global public health resources.
It shows how incredibly fragile our global baselines really are, and that fragility is not just confined to human biology. When we pivot to the global political stage today, we are seeing those exact same systemic breakdowns.
Very true.
Now, a quick disclaimer for you listening. Looking at the geopolitical landscape, we're just charting the facts exactly as they are reported in the Daily Tech Reader. Both of us remain strictly impartial here. We aren't taking any political sides, we are simply analyzing the text.
Exactly. And the overarching theme in the diplomatic sphere today is that traditional institutional guardrails are dissolving. They are being replaced by direct, raw leverage.
Let's trace the global fault lines. Donald Trump is claiming that a U.S.-Iran deal is, quote, very close, telling Axios that Iranian officials contacted him directly.
Right.
He also stated that he warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he would find himself isolated if strikes on Iran continued. Now, Netanyahu did halt the direct strikes on Iran, but the regional conflict is still incredibly active.
Yes. Israel just struck the Lebanese city of Tyre following evacuation orders. That was an operation that resulted in 5 deaths and wounded 4 Red Cross paramedics.
And in response to that, Iran is threatening to resume its operations.
The critical context here is the total collapse of the April 8th ceasefire framework. That agreement is defunct. We are now operating in an environment where treaties and diplomatic frameworks have essentially lost their binding power.
And the economic ripple effects of that are immediate. There is currently a U.S. naval blockade of Iranian shipping, and Iran has essentially closed the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz is the quintessential geopolitical choke point. A massive percentage of the world's oil flows through that narrow waterway.
So when it closes?
When it closes, global energy markets spike violently, and that connects directly back to the tech sector we started with.
Oh, of course.
Those AI models training on massive server farms require immense amounts of electricity. When energy prices surge due to a blockade in the Middle East, the operating costs for OpenAI and Apple surge in Silicon Valley. Everything is deeply entangled.
We are also seeing tactical military movements elsewhere. Nigeria's military just freed 360 people who were abducted by Boko Haram.
Which demonstrates that while high-level strategic diplomacy is failing in the Middle East, localized tactical security operations are still functioning. They are achieving significant outcomes on the ground in West Africa.
So what does this all mean for us at home? Because the tension between raw power and institutional order is also playing out domestically in the U.S.
Right.
According to the source, Trump is alleging mass voter fraud in California's June 2nd primary. And that has prompted the U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles to launch an investigation.
And the timing there is notable.
Very. This is happening right as Democrat Xavier Becerra and Republican Steve Hilton emerged as the top 2 candidates in the governor's race.
It highlights a persistent strain on the domestic electoral system. The actual mechanisms of voting are continually subject to legal and political challenges.
And the friction around borders and immigration is just as intense. A federal judge just struck down the Trump administration's policy that required a $100,000 annual fee on new H-1B visas.
Which is a massive victory for the tech industry.
Exactly. But on the exact same day, the Senate passed a $70 billion immigration enforcement bill. Democratic senators are warning that Congress is ceding its oversight role over border policy with this bill.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that juxtaposition is a defining paradox of modern globalization.
How so?
Well, ceasefire language has lost its meaning internationally, right? And domestically, the tech industry requires frictionless borders to import the best global talent. Striking down that $100,000 fee removes a massive barrier for engineers coming to the U.S.
Right.
Yet simultaneously, the government is authorizing $70 billion to harden physical borders and increase enforcement.
So capital, data, and highly specialized tech talent demand open doors, while the political establishment is heavily investing in locking the doors for everyone else.
Exactly. And all of these interconnected tensions, executive power, immigration enforcement, and voting rights are currently converging on the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's right.
The court is entering its final sprint before the end of June, and they are preparing to issue major rulings on all of these fronts simultaneously.
This system is just wound incredibly tight. An energy spike in Hormuz hits a data center in California. An immigration bill in the Senate impacts the talent pool of a company going public on the NASDAQ.
Is all connected.
It feels exhausting just talking about it, which is why our final topic today is so vital. Despite all the geopolitical fractures, the biological anxieties, and the technological whiplash, we still seek out a release valve. We still crave shared cultural mega events.
When the complexity of the world becomes too much, humanity reliably retreats to the simplicity of play and shared spectacle.
And spectacles do not get larger than what is happening this week. Here's where it gets really interesting. This Thursday, June 11th, the largest FIFA World Cup in history kicks off at the Estadio Azteca with Mexico playing South Africa.
The scale here is staggering.
It really is. 48 teams, 104 matches spread across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Mexico City has actually declared opening day a public holiday.
Wow.
FIFA is projecting $9 billion in revenue and 6 billion total engagements across their platforms.
6 billion engagements means the vast majority of the connected human population is pausing to focus their attention on a single event. It is a rare moment of global synchronicity.
And the entertainment surrounding it totally reflects that. Shakira and Burna Boy are headlining the opening ceremony, and then Shakira is returning on July 19th for the final halftime show alongside Madonna and BTS.
That is quite the lineup.
FIFA is heavily promoting this as the ultimate celebration of a borderless, unified world. But here's the glaring irony of this entire event. While they are broadcasting global unity, Africa's absolute top-ranked referee has been barred from officiating at this World Cup.
Oh, really? Why?
Because he was denied a U.S. entry visa.
It is the perfect encapsulation of everything we just discussed. Sports act as a mirror for globalization.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
The tournament spans 3 sovereign nations and projects this illusion of a world united by a game. But the harsh realities of those $70 billion border enforcement policies dictate who actually gets to step on the pitch. We celebrate global culture, but we enforce rigid physical borders.
Right. The broadcast rights easily cross the border, but the actual human beings cannot. Yet when the talent does make it through, it fundamentally elevates the game. Just look at the NBA Finals.
The talent pipeline there has completely globalized.
Yeah, the San Antonio Spurs just beat the New York Knicks 115-111 in Game 3 at Madison Square Garden. Victor Wembanyama, the French prodigy, was just unstoppable.
He is having an incredible series.
He posted 32 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 blocks. And his teammate, Stephon Castle, scored 23 points. They became the first pair of players 22 years old or younger to both score at least 22 points in a single finals game.
So you have a 22-year-old French player dominating the most famous arena in America. It really proves the central thesis of those tech companies fighting for H-1B visas.
Which is what?
When you allow the absolute best global talent to flow freely, the entire system reaches new heights of performance.
Absolutely. And just to close out our snapshot of June 9th, 2026, nature is providing a brief moment of relief.
We could use it.
A major cold front is finally pushing through the Gulf Coast. It's moving across Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. It's dropping temperatures 10 to 15 degrees and breaking a severe early-season heat wave. The Atlantic hurricane basin remains quiet for now.
It's a nice, grounding reminder. Despite our AI models and our trillion-dollar valuations, basic atmospheric conditions still dictate the comfort and safety of our daily lives. I guess it's a literal cooling-off metaphor for a world running incredibly hot.
I love that. So let's take a breath and look at the territory we just covered today. We started at the absolute zenith of modern wealth, watching a single individual approach a $1 trillion net worth as the AI and space race accelerates.
Yep.
We examined the biological toll of our environment, where engineered foods cloud our cognition, forcing us to rely on groundbreaking drugs to rewrite our metabolic pathways, all while foundational plagues like Ebola still persist.
Right.
We traced a geopolitical map where traditional diplomacy is fractured, leaving global courts, shipping lanes, and borders in a state of high tension. And we ended with the massive cultural spectacles, a record-breaking World Cup, and a historic NBA Finals that momentarily bring this fragmented world together.
When you synthesize all of these data points, it leaves a lingering question for you to think about. We are navigating an era where private individuals command the wealth of nations. Our artificial intelligence is evolving exponentially faster than our biological brains can process it. When we look at the failing diplomatic frameworks, the border disputes, and the profound systemic strains we've discussed today, are we simply witnessing standard geopolitical turmoil? Or are we experiencing the violent, messy growing pains of a species that is rapidly transitioning into something entirely new?
Wow. That is a heavy question to sit with the next time you feel overwhelmed by the news cycle. The
Right.
world is moving fast, but understanding the mechanisms behind the chaos makes it a lot easier to navigate. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We know your time is valuable, and we hope we help filter the noise into something meaningful today. We will catch you next time.